your feelings show. You believe in love, and you're prepared to grow together.
Good evening and welcome to The Art of Healing. I'm Alexa Major, and tonight I'm joined by the creator of this series, Jonathan Lowe, and the program's most long-standing host, Bill O'Donnell, in the beginning of a retrospective of the past 10 years of this series. Hi, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi, Alexa. Can you imagine, how it would be if you got to go to a clinic that you could then see a medical doctor, a Chinese medical doctor, a naturopath, a chiropractor, a psychological counselor, whatever you needed as part of your healthcare package. That's what would be ideal in some way for us as consumers of healthcare services. That's where it seems like it has to go. Or bring back the religious orders of old that out of the goodness of their heart and their spiritual path to come and provide service, for the community at large. Because if we're going to evolve and our consciousness is going to evolve and grow with it, we have to imagine what's going to be best for us and then put it out there, and hold that vision and let others share it or talk about it, and then we kind of grow together. And I think that's really what Jonathan's show has done in some ways. I know it's helped me. I've learned a great deal just being a part of the show.
There's also a fantasy I have had for a number of years, less so recently than before, that when we did get to that higher place of being healed, that we would become, or we are becoming, so sensitive to one another that we can pick up if that other person's got something a little bit off, or if they've got a migraine developing or something, so that we actually get to the point where you can just almost reach over and touch someone and say, not even say anything, just a non-verbal connection that just gives them that energy that they need, or that open door to another energy. But that's, I think, I don't know, I hate to say we're a long way from that, but I know we're not there yet. And maybe that's just a fantasy that I used to have. I certainly haven't thought about much recently. But,
although you've seen, perhaps in your programs, instantaneous results, is there a moment that you think about, or have you experienced moments where on some level that energetic shifting was occurring and you could, it was palpable, you could see that in the moment, how quick that could be? Is that an experience you've had or not? Maybe not at this point.
I'm not getting one specifically.
Yeah.
Well, something analogous to that comes up. I remember when we went out and covered Abbot David Garrett's retirement at the Benedictine Monastery in Pecos. And the incentive for Jonathan, the show, was that we could get, talk about spiritual healing.
I want to introduce Brother Daniel Stromera.
Hello.
Who's been away at school a lot, but he's one of the old-timers around
in
here.
St. Louis, yeah.
In St. Louis. What are you studying?
Church history, PhD program. I've been there for a year and a half now.
Okay. How long have you been at Pecos?
I've been at Pecos for 11 years.
All right. So you've seen a lot of changes?
A lot of changes. A lot of good things happening, Lord moving and blessing.
What does it mean today to you personally?
Today's honoring David for all of his giftedness and the power which is operated within his life and in our lives here in community.
Can you speak about some of your experiences in seeing the Holy Spirit work, particularly with healing here in the community?
Yeah, well, we've prayed over people. They've had backs healed, their eyes healed, cancer healed, all sorts of things that the Lord's done, medically and internally too, in salvation and reconciliation in families, marriages, an awful lot of that. So it's been good.
How about in your life personally?
The Lord's healing? There's been all sorts of things. I guess major healing would be, gee whiz, I have to think about it. Well, there was one time when I almost died and the Lord healed me. I was hit by lightning, and I almost died. I had left my body and I was brought back, and so that would be one thing. And,
that's a pretty big one.
Well, yeah. So,
any more like that behind that one? Or?
No, probably not on that order. but
So the
the
community,
Lord's faithfulness.
the community prayed over you? And
Yeah, once I came conscious and taken at the hospital.
And then we interviewed Abbot David and all, I don't know, practically everybody in the community at that time, and then went back and edited out. And one of the questions I asked was, what healing have you seen here? Well, they individually, not together, and they reported literally the blind got their sight back, the lame were walking, people were coming back to life after struck with lightning. I mean, it goes on like this. But every person said the most important healing was the emotional healing, and most of them said, and it was their own. And so that really brought it home for me that, wow, here's a credible sources. I mean, monks and nuns and brothers and that kind of thing, and priests, and they're all saying it was their own healing, and a lot of it emotionally was the most important thing, even though the great phenomena of physical healing was taking place. Remember that? I mean, that was a real eye-opener for me, because, I mean, these were credible witnesses, and it just went on and on, one person after another.
I've used interpreters for people that couldn't speak English, and I've spoken in tongues praying over them, and they understand me better than the interpreter, and I don't know what I'm saying, and they get healed. Most of the time, not all the time. I'm not perfect yet. But I'm using the Lord, and He is. Yeah. So this place has been used by the Lord, even though we're weak tools. The Lord has used us in a strong way. Do a lot of work.
But those of us who have been more active here know the blessings that we can receive here, and the strength, you know, to do God's will.
you've seen a lot of emotional and psychological healing as well as physical healing here.
Oh, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you know, the healings, you know, are healings. You know, there have been many, you know, I can't recall at the moment specific ones, but I do know of many healings that have taken place here, spiritual, physical, and otherwise, you know.
Is it just by coming, how does the Holy Spirit work through the people here to affect these healings?
Well, you know, I don't think so much the place is the place that gives the healing. I know it isn't. But it's people, I think, preparing themselves for a healing of sorts. And they need somewhere to be that is holy, and this is a holy place. The place itself does not give you miracles, but they take place here. It's kind of like a holy ground, so to say, for the Lord. And those of us who receive healings here, I think God is already working this healing in us elsewhere at home or in our communities. And eventually we come to a place where we blossom, so to say, like a flower. And that's what Pecos has been able to do. It's allowed us to burst into life.
That's great.
I mean, that was a real eye-opener for me, because, I mean, those were credible witnesses, and it just went on and on, one person after another. So that was kind of reassuring, because most people out there think, well, religion, you know, and organized religion, there's no value, you know, get rid of it and keep it away from me, and, you know, and yet here was an example so close to us that was doing great healing work. Mm-hmm. You don't hear about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've heard a lot of people share about healings that have happened to them on the show, but I can't think of any that during the show and during the taping of a healing that people have reported anything other than obviously you feel better when you've had a massage, or in this case, now we're in acupuncture over here, and people have obviously benefited from those sessions, but whether they've had a miraculous healing, I don't know. Although the idea of miraculous healing really fascinates me, where people are diagnosed with terminal illnesses and then they have an amazing turnaround, go into remission. I know Andrew Weil has studied that in his book, but it's something we could look into, I think. But I'm not sure if those miraculous healings are really what it's all about, even though I think they're part of the formula. Can you think of anything that's happened on the show that was truly remarkable during the process of taping?
Well, again, the one we mentioned earlier about the Spirit Bookstore experience, but sometimes you see things, and a lot of it would be after the show. You know, you'd hear people, they've gotten over their fear of it or whatever, and they'd had a catharsis almost of just sharing it sometimes. There were often cases of that, even if it was on the street or wherever we were. I'm sure on that list, you know, you'd find any number of cases like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of books, and you periodically will mention a book or a name or something. There are the sort of icons that are out there, the best-selling authors, Deepak Chopra and those people, you seem to really keep the messages and the experience at home, really share the process on a level that we're all living every day in our community. Is that a conscious choice to stay away from the more quote-unquote famous people, or do you like to work with them too? Or
actually, one of the earlier hosts was very keen. She picked out a list of 12 people that were all extremely well known, nationally famous, most of them. And I felt, just like you're saying, keeping it at home, I felt that true healing is not necessarily what those very famous people are talking about. I mean, obviously, to some extent it is, but I really did make a conscious effort that I wanted it just to be the workaday people that had practices that weren't necessarily famous, but that were doing great work and that still had a lot of information. It just felt like that was more, to me, what I wanted to focus on, because the famous people had a lot of people focusing on them as it was. I don't know what... We've done some famous...
Yeah, well, over our show a little while ago was Terry Cole Whitaker, and what a joy she was giving a talk at the Whole Life Expo. And we ambushed Tim Leary one day on his way to give a talk, and got a question on Tim, and there were some people like that. And then we did, we had Access America, who's host the famous
Willard?
Comedian. Yeah. Coming in, good call. We were both trying to remember the name and stuff, but it really wasn't that end of the market in a way that we did, and we got some famous people in delicate situations. We got the last interview with Archbishop Sanchez before he, went away, and nobody's seen him since, kind of a thing, and that was very touching. We even offered our footage to 60 Minutes when they were doing their piece on it, but as the producer said, I'm sorry I can't use this, we're looking for the smoking gun, So we didn't somehow get the smoking gun, but I thought it was very touching, some of the things that he shared with us.
Is there a particular message that you give to your priests and fellow clergy with regard to these people who perhaps have had a lot of different experiences that may have inhibited their faith, or they weren't able to continue it in the normal fashion, somehow were away for it from a while? I've seen that in my own life, and I know it was a struggle to come back. What comment do you have for ex-Catholics who still are carrying this burden of whatever it is that keeps them from returning to their church?
It's a very fine observation that you make, and it's certainly the challenge that we face too. I always share with my priests that we have to be, in a sense, like the Lord to people. By that I mean we have to express our presence to them in the same way. I believe that Jesus was always showing hospitality to people. He took time to listen to them and time to minister to their needs. He visited homes, regardless of what their positions were or their educational background. He could associate with the saints and with the sinners, with the young and the old, the poor and the wealthy. All people were God's children. And I tell my own clergy that we have to have that same hospitality, that same warmth and personal approach to people, and being approachable, that they too can find in us one who will listen to them and be able to respond as best we can, given our own limitations, to their needs.
In regards to this issue, of course, many women feel, especially in these contemporary times where they want to be treated equally, that the Catholic Church has perhaps not always been an environment where they felt they were equals. In what particular ways is maybe the Church trying to make themselves, make women feel like they have a just as important role as men?
Well, I think that churches everywhere, I can't verify every single diocese, but certainly within our own, we make every effort to involve women in every aspect of leadership within our church, which we're allowed to involve. And they are our leaders. I could not operate our archdiocese without that expertise. Not only are they very well educated, but they're very sensitive to people's needs. They're very keenly dedicated to the Lord in their lives. They want to be close to the Lord and to share that closeness with other people. I have to affirm them, and I think dioceses and parishes, by and large, have involved them in these very important and essential positions more than ever, and it's increasing. I think that they're concerned about language within prayers and traditional liturgies. That is being addressed at this very time in the documents that are being reviewed, so that proper language, which would be non-offensive and will be more inclusive, can be brought about. And that's, again, sensitivity to them. I don't know what else we can go into at this time, but I would just say overall, a very keen awareness is present today as to the suffering of women. I think, for instance, in terms of the single-parent families and the support that they need. And we try to reach out now with support systems to single-parent families, be it the woman or the man. The majority of the time it is the woman trying to raise her children, trying to hold down her job, oftentimes trying to go to school to better herself and still maintain her relationships to family and to friends. It's an enormous challenge for them. My heart just goes out to them. These are issues that were not always before us before in such great numbers, but they are today, and we'll have to look to them in the coming century as well. The other issue, Bill, that you mentioned regarding morality today, both within the church and out of the church, we know that we're living in changing times. Anyone that cannot say that has not kept their eyes open. Our society has gone through some enormous changes from the 60s onward. We're a more liberated society, we are told, and therefore there's fewer restrictions regarding law and moral values. People are allowed to make their decisions. And we see a great liberalization, as it were, in the whole issue of sexuality, which you've mentioned. We hear it written continually about safe sex. 20, 30 years ago, this would have been a scandal for any newspaper or any discussion. It's almost as though it's being promoted as long as it's safe. And with that type of environment, especially with our younger people, it's going to stick. It's a constant challenge for parents, for families especially, as well as for churches of various denominations to respond to these efforts to liberalize sexual mores. And what effect does that have on family? What does it have on society? It's affected the church. We know today that there's been many allegations and even an arrest of our clergymen, our priests, because of sexual molestation, sexual misconduct. And we look to them not as any different from the rest of society, as it were. The church doesn't live in a vacuum. It lives within the society in which we live. And so very frequently the prevalent issues that are there are affecting us as well. That's not an excuse. Our challenge to all of our priests is to fortify themselves to be strong within an environment that does not always propose the values that we feel are Christ-like values, and that we don't buy into those values ourselves. I think maybe the Lord, in His own words, said, that you build your house upon a foundation of stone, so that when the storms come and the winds and rains lash against it, the house will stand because it's built on a firm foundation. If it's built on sand, it's going to be destroyed. Well, that firm foundation for us has always been a foundation of prayer, of self-discipline, and of support. People's support around you to maintain, keep your eyes on the Lord and maintain that strong spirituality. So these are the messages I try to communicate to my own priests in a time of difficulty, and to all people, because these issues, these allegations are not limited just to churchmen. We are a very small percentage of a huge, enormous picture within our country. This type of abuse is occurring in families. I can't ask any social worker and they'll tell you of the extent, and every profession as well. So we have to ask, what's the common bond? What has caused this? Is it that we're more aware of it today, or is there a multiplication of this breakdown in discipline because of an environment in which we live? What seems to be happening to us? We don't have easy answers. We're searching for the answers. But I do know that we need to be very strict in our screening of candidates for the priesthood, because we're told by the experts today that if people have been abused or come from hurting families, emotionally they will not always be well balanced themselves to handle difficulties. So we have to be very tough in screening. And then we have to be very realistic in our training of those seminarians for the priesthood, so that they know the difficulties that are there and they can prove themselves. And then lastly, after ordination, they have to be well supported, both in their prayer life, their spirituality, and surrounded by support groups.
And you know, a lot of shows like that. You know, every show is different. You know, so over 100 shows, we really. And I didn't do all of them, so he saw more of them than I. So he'd probably have a better perspective of what was going on.
Yeah, we should talk about the Archbishop Sanchez one a little bit more, because that was a very tricky moment there when he was just getting into the difficult times. In fact, at that time, we didn't know how difficult it was about to become.
Right, we didn't.
And he was talking a lot about forgiveness and about how he had really tried to address the problem of the pedophile priests, and he apologized on our show very, very profusely about what had happened. And you could feel he was a man of great humanity. He really, really was sorry for what had happened, but probably was even more sorry that it ended up with his demise. I don't know, because in a way he was a great person then, but in another way, obviously, it wasn't appropriate for the community for him to be Archbishop any longer.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. That's a whole story in itself, and I hope we get a chance to do a follow-up piece on that one as it continues to grow. But at the time, yeah, they're one of the leading priests at the largest parish in the whole diocese, and a guy who was a full colonel in the Air Force Chaplaincy Corps, and he'd come in from Canada, and they didn't really know his background, and he'd won awards, and he was up to become a general. You know, I mean, this guy, you know, so he wasn't just fully non-disclosive in his priesthood, but you know, in other parts of his life were also. And all of a sudden, man, he's gone. The accusations come, and he disappeared. They never saw that guy again. He went back to his home country, whatever it is, and so Archbishop Sanchez was there. Apologizing or asking forgiveness if even one priest, because he was the head priest. I mean, he was the archbishop, so he was responsible for whatever happened on his watch during his time and in his location. So it was a very touching piece. And but you're right. He was. I still love the man. He was a great inspiration in a lot of other ways, and a lot of people here, you know, really feel that same way. But it was a tragedy for the Roman Catholic Church and all the churches really in New Mexico.
I'm going to pull out one more. I'm going to pull out one more random. Harry Oldfield.
Now, that was back in 1990 when I was in England, and he's actually the one non-New Mexico person, so I guess it's not really healing in Santa Fe with Harry Oldfield, it's healing in South London, England. And a very interesting character, because he was actually using crystals to heal. He was actually putting electrical currents through crystals and putting the crystals near people's wounds or whatever needed to be healed. We was dealing a lot with people who'd had surgery and helping it heal faster. Having great success with that, but what he was really interested in and developing at that time was the ability to actually videotape the auric field of someone and then analyze from the video. He did a computer program and then could analyze where disease was about to happen. So he was looking into the future through the auric field and seeing blockages. He was very early in that. And I tried to cover what he already knew in the show. He shared a lot about it. He obviously couldn't share everything because he was trying to develop something. I think he was going to make a lot of money out of it.
The British Medical Association News. And here I'm scanning a young doctor's net in one of our hospitals, which I shan't mention, but this was the early development of my discovery from Curling photography, which was ESM scanning or electroscanning method. In the early days it was called the Curlian gun, which wasn't really an accurate description because it was gun described something like violence, you know, shooting somebody. So we changed the name, and it was called ESM, where we could scan the body in 3 dimensions, the energy field of the body. Before that, in Curling photography, we could see a wonderful colour picture and a visual image, but it was not in real time. It was only in 2 dimensions, and it wasn't in real time. Here, we can scan the body in 3 dimensions, in real time, but we've lost the image. Right. So I wanted back not only the image, but the colour as well of the energy field. And thanks to computer technology, and some wonderful people on this project, I've been able to do this. And so I'd like to sort of show you something of that now, if I may. What we're seeing here are, is a video recording from our computer screen of interference patterns. And it's a special interference technique. And when we were able to show this, it was showing up some very interesting interference. Vortexes were shown in the body. Meridians, lines of force seemed to show up. And it seemed to be showing a lot of things that people with sensitive gifts of vision have talked about for some time. And I believe that this is nothing spooky about this. This is pure science, which is an interesting interference that happens between light waves hitting the body and the body's own natural emissions, which then produce interference. And here we've got a young man. I'm just going to improve the colour for you. You can see here he has patterns all around him and emanating from him. This young man was unfortunately suffering with cancer, and when you'll turn around in a moment, you'll be able to see the image of the tumour, which is this circular spot here. I'm pointing it out now on the screen, coming from his back. And this pulsing chakra down there, can you see that glow of energy?
And I think that is the future of healing, that we will have devices. We've got Kirlian photography, for whatever that is worth, I'm not sure, but I think the sensitive energies of what we're made up with are recordable and viewable by technology. And I think more and more we're going to be able to see things ahead of time, so we'll be able to see cancer developing way ahead, and all the diseases, and catch them so early that we can actually cure them before they become physically manifested, hopefully.
Yeah, it's interesting, even in the realm of nature, I've had experiences with dolphins before who are sonic beings and are known to read human bodies as well as, their own pod, members of their own pod. But it seems like the technologies are kind of following or have the potential to follow the force of nature, what's already in there, and how we can actually learn from the forces of the environment and nature that are around us.
I remember when we did the show with Rebecca Fitzgerald, who does Dolphin Swim, one of the people sharing for that show was talking about how the dolphins were picking out one of the women and swimming with her in a particular way that was different. And then they found out that that woman was pregnant later, and that they realized the dolphin had picked up that she was pregnant way before they knew she knew she was pregnant.
It's interesting. Every experience I've had with dolphins is like, if there's a pregnant woman there, that's the first. That's their first fascination. Go check out what's going on inside there.
It's the same pod that was discovered as a pod that was friendly to swimmers over 10 years ago by some divers who were excavating a wreck that's about 1.5 miles from where we go. And the dolphins would come around where the guys were excavating, and they'd come around every day and play with the divers. And it was Bob Marks, who's a fairly well-known treasure diver. Anyway, the word got out to a few people that there was a pod of these wild dolphins that would swim with you, And in a lot of situations, dolphins will surf the front of your boat and hang around the boat, but there aren't many pods that will wait for you to get in the water and then swim, like this.
Really?
Yeah, face to face for a couple of hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're inches from your face. And I suggest to people that they don't reach out and touch them, because the dolphins will touch you if you just make yourself available. I mean, what they'll do is you swim like this with your hands behind your back, and then they'll come by like this and sort of drag their pec fin along the side of your body and then roll over like this and look at it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of your heart, let your feelings